After nightfall in the Appalachian Mountains, an ordinary drive can become a journey into the unknown. Imagine gripping the wheel as headlights carve lonely shapes through pin-drop silence, the sound of something tapping at your window, or glowing eyes staring from the tree line turns that silence into pure dread. This isn't just legend. Tonight, you'll hear 6 true encounters from real people who each set out on a drive and found themselves haunted by things no GPS can predict. From mysterious passengers who vanish in a blink, to tunnels that refuse to let you leave, to phantom, pursuers, and ghostly mile markers. Every story here will make you think twice the next time you travel these dark, winding roads. Think you're brave enough to keep going? Prove it. Hit subscribe to Something Scray so you never miss the latest chilling tale, and share your own creepy road experience in the comments below. Your story might just be the one that keeps us all awake, headlights on high, long after. The credits roll. Buckle up. This drive might take you somewhere you never expected on, just maybe won't bring you back. Story 1. The Flickering Passenger. Cole Winters used to love the Appalachian highways at night, the way the headlights traced silver ribbons through ancient pines. The rhythm of tires lulling the world into a false sense of peace. He was a man who'd made a life out of movement, a traveling salesman who chalked up late-night drives as the price of freedom. But sometimes, freedom can twist into something else when darkness presses in from all sides. It was the final week of October when Cole found himself cutting through the winding roads between Elkins and Boone. The rain hadn't let up for hours. Sheets of slippery mist rising from every hollow, twin rivers of water carving the blacktop. His only company was the radio, crackling out static and flickering oldies that faded between stations like dying fireflies. Just past 2 a.m., Cole rounded a sharp bend and spotted her alone figure beside a rusted road sign, arm outstretched, thumb pointing skyward. She was soaked to the skin, her coat plastered to her slender frame, tangled hair glinting like wet wire in his high beams. For a minute, Cole hesitated. He'd heard enough warnings about picking folks up at night, but the cold looked so real on her, so present, that his conscience kicked in. He stopped, leaned across the seat, rolled down the window a crack. "You need a lift?" called out wary. The woman nodded, not speaking, her eyes catching the dashlight seemed much older than her face on odd, glassy calm behind pale blue irises. She climbed into the passenger seat without a sound. Water pooled at her feet, steam curling from her breath. As he pulled back onto the road, Cole tried to break the ice. "Rough night out here? Where you heading?" She glanced over. "Anywhere's better than here," she whispered, and turned to look out the window, her reflection ghosting beside her. For a few miles, they rode in silence. The radio flickered, then died completely, leaving only the hum of the engine. Cole drummed his fingers against the wheel, nerves prickling. Air grew thick, too heavy for just 2 people, too cold despite the heater on full blast. He checked the rear view. For a split second, the woman's shape was wrong duplix, posed as if she occupied 2 places at once. He blinked hard. She was still there, drowning in shadows. A mile later, the radio popped alive again, but it wasn't music now. It was a child's voice, muffled and stammering, reciting the weather report in a loop. "Chance of fog. Drivers beware. Chance of fog." Cole frowned. "Do you hear that?" The woman didn't answer. In fact, her head seemed to flicker slightly, as if his brain struggled to keep her in focus. He tried again, louder. "Did you hear that on the radio just now?" Her head turned impossibly slow. "She shouldn't have stopped," she murmured, staring blankly beyond the windshield. "Not on nights like this." The air went ice cold. Cole's hand shook. The rain intensified, hammering the roof. Shadows writhed in the corners of his headlights. Then the passenger began to warp, her edges shifting as if she were a broadcast gone wrong, first a child, then an old woman, then a faceless smear. She flickered there, gone, there again, every interval snapping like an electrical surge. All the while, her voice echoed from the car's speakers. You shouldn't have stopped. Panicked, Cole fumbled for his phone. No bars. He pressed the gas, desperate to reach the next gas station or sign of life. But every mile marker was the same, a smeared, unnumbered post lost in mist. The road grew thinner, the trees leaned closer, glancing. Cole realized the passenger seat was inexplicably soaked, yet the woman herself was bone dry. Mud pooled beneath her boots, ancient and dark, smelling of boggy earth. The car filled with the scent of wet moss and something older, like roots unearthed from a grave. The woman slowly reached for the radio, her hand passing through the knobs. Skin translucent beneath the dashboard lights. You have to let me out, she intoned, voice now layered, echoing between many ages, male and female, young and ancient. Where? Cole croaked, barely able to speak. She stared at him, eyes swirling with fog. Let me out. Before you go where you can't come back? The car's lights flickered, illuminating a fork in the road where he'd never seen one before. Instinct screaming, Cole jammed the brakes. The passenger was gone. Only a deep, wet imprint remained on the seat, shaped like neither man nor woman, but something in between. Cold fog rolled through the open window, whispering across his neck. He tore out of the hollow, never looking back. The road mercifully dead-ended in a familiar crossroads, the lights of Boone winking from distant hills like lifelines. Cole never told anyone the whole story. But for weeks afterward, he played his dashcam footage every night, hoping for clarity. The video showed every detail of the drive, except the woman. No one entered his car. The seat beside him remained empty and dry for the entire ride, save for a brief moment when the screen flickers. The lights dim, and a whisper rides the static. You shouldn't have stopped. He never drove those back roads again. But sometimes, when fog closes thick on the interstate, Cole catches a glimpse in his rearview mirror, blur in the back seat. Eyes too old for comfort, waiting for another ride. If you ever see a lone stranger on those Appalachian highways, ask yourself, are you sure you're really alone? And if you stop, will you ever get back the person who got behind the wheel? If this story made you shiver, subscribe to Something Scray and tell us in the comments what would you have done if it was you on that empty, endless road? Story 2. Eyes by the Rail Crossing for Zara Wilkes. Appalachia was more than Hamet, was a test she'd taken every day. Growing up in Bell Hollow, she knew to respect superstition, but not to believe it. Night shift nursing down at the county. Hospital meant long drives through winding back roads where phone signals vanished and headlights seemed to only deepen the dark. It was survival. Coffee, podcasts, and a no-nonsense attitude. Until one October night at the Jefferson Rail Crossing, survival found new meaning. It was just after midnight when Zara's shift let out. The air held that wet electric charge of an impending storm. Dew purling on the windshield as she turned her aging Civic onto Route 52. She sang low to herself as she crossed the desolate valley. The world shrinking to a tunnel of yellowish beams and nervous cricket song. Ahead, the railroad's old barriers shimmered in fog. An odd patch of cold that always made her teeth ache. Tonight, the signal lights blinked despite no scheduled trains. Red and white pulsed in the mist, rhythmic and insistent, a warning or maybe an invitation. Figuring it was a glitch, Zara pulled up, foot on the brake, humming nervously. Her headlights barely touched the rails. The woods pressing against the crossing seemed impenetrable, the darkness fluid and alive. That's when she saw the eyes. At first just a pair, low to the gravel and shining pale yellow like the reflection of a deer, but they didn't blink. When her brights caught them, their shape was off. Too large for a fox or coyote set, wide and perfectly still. The wind cut down, silencing the frogs, and she shivered as a second set appeared behind the first. Then a third and a fourth, until a dozen, perhaps more, hovered at the tree line around the crossing. Her phone was useless. No bars. The Civics. Radio sputtered static, then a low hum that loosened her stomach. The eyes advanced two at a time, then several in unison, always moving just outside the full reach of her brights. Zara locked her doors, pulsed, thudding so hard she could feel it in her ears. A fleeting memory surfaced. Her cousins' warning when they were kids. After their dog went missing near these same tracks. If you see the watcher's eyes by the rail, never leave the car and never look back if you drive away. Some things follow shadows, not roads. But the eyes didn't retreat as she'd hoped. Instead, they began to circle, slow as clock hands. A low glyph of shapes moving in the night, their eerie glow unwavering. The old crossing barrier shuddered as if battered by a silent wind. Out of nowhere, a massive shadow loomed tall, too broad, ducking beneath the lowest birches. Zara caught just a sliver of its shape. 4 legs? 6. The shifting bulk and the fuzzy outline that made her vision swim. Ow. The crunch of gravel under unseen weight was impossibly loud. She fumbled. For gear, reverse, anything to get moving. The car stuttered but didn't stall. Heart pounding, she stepped on the gas, willing herself not to look directly at the largest pair of eyes, fixed just above the car's hood-and-elmost on the windshield. Something scraped the trunk, loud enough to rattle her teeth. She jerked. The wheel, trying not to swerve into the tree line or the creek running beside the tracks. With a howl that seemed both beast and wind, the shape lunged. Her car fishtailed, tires skidding on the wet crossing. For a second, everything inside the car flickered. Dashboard, headlights, even her own pulse. Time hiccuped. Then, the red barrier light burst with a sharp pop, spilling the road ahead. With sudden, terrifying clarity. All the eyes blinked out at once. Only then did Zara careen into open roadway, speeding so fast the road itself blurred. She reached the next intersection, Main Street, civilization gasping, hands hurting from the death grip on the wheel. She pulled up in front of the 24-hour gas station, unable to breathe, engine ticking hot. Behind her, the Civic's rear bumper was gouged by deep scratches, paint peeled away into ragged strips. Tiny prints clawed but wrong, like twisted hands ran along the trunk. Mist was still rising from the metal, cold and slick. When she managed to call her friend to recount the story, they half-joked it was just a bobcat or some big raccoon. Yet when Zara checked her backup camera footage the next morning, she saw a split-second image of a pale, twisted face peering into her taillight, its eyes not reflecting, but shimmering from within like a lantern behind flesh. Zara tried reporting the incident but found herself tongue-tied. No one else experienced anything that night. The old-timer at the gas station asked just one question. That thing following you. Was it counting your headlights or your heartbeats? She never stopped at that rail crossing again, not even for red lights, not even for trains. Soon, other late-night drivers in Bell Hollow started reporting eyes at the edge of the rails, always more pairs, always coming closer, never blinking. A new local legend formed, the Rail Watcher. Those unlucky enough to meet its gaze at midnight either escaped with deep scratches and nightmares, or were found wandering days later, empty-eyed, pulled from woods miles away with no memory except the echo of glowing eyes slicing through the fog. Zara still drives Route 52, But her windows stay up, and her eyes fixed on the yellow line, ever on the forest or those teeth of light flickering in the night. If this kept you glancing at your own mirrors, let us know in the comments. What would you do with a dozen eyes? Waiting beyond your headlights? Subscribe to Something Scray and never ride alone on Appalachian roads after midnight. On these back roads, sometimes it's better not to see what's right in front of you. Story 3. Hitchhiker in Read the Road through Mill Creek Pass is long and lonely, curving through Appalachian hills where daylight evaporates too soon. For Grant Barnes, driving those late-night miles was routine a job hazard, hauling groceries. And freight between tiny towns, barely clinging to the main road. He was proud of his record. 17 years as a long-haul trucker. No accidents, no fines. But even Grant had his rituals. Never cruise past mile 43 without checking the rear view, and absolutely never offer a ride to anyone you see. Standing in the glare of those battered road signs, still. Every winter, someone broke the unspoken rule. It was the first hard freeze of January when it happened to Grant. A numb Sunday night. His rig loaded down with perishables for the store in Black Ridge. The world beyond his windshield was a bruise of ice, snow shivering in whirlwinds across the asphalt. Frost feathered every edge of the cab. By the time he passed the dark curve before mile 43, his coffee was cold and his eyes heavy, so he almost didn't notice the figure by the shoulder. Almost she was there, lit in a splash of high beams. A woman, young and thin, wearing a cherry red jacket with the hood drawn tight. She raised an arm, reluctant, as if questioning the gesture. Her jeans were soaked from the knees down, and the plastic grocery bag at her feet sagged heavily, leaving a wet spot in the salt-marred slush. Grant's hand hovered over the brake. At first, he told himself she was just another stranded local maybe. Someone whose car broke down or who misjudged the lonely walk from the gas station at the county line. But something stopped him, a tug in the pit of his stomach. It was the way she looked at the truck right into him as if she recognized him, as if she'd been waiting all along. He passed her by, chest tightening. A mile later, the guilt set in. Truckers help out. There's plenty to fear in these hollows, but cold like that can kill. He slowed. Worked through the obscene logistics of turning a semi around on an empty mountain road, then shook his head vigorously. Keep moving, he muttered. Don't do it. Not at mile 43. But the radio stuttered, spitting out static, then a burst of Ruby Tuesday the Stones, twisted too slow. Grant's heart thudded. He glanced into the passenger mirror. For a second, he thought he saw a flash of red, a pale face caught in the glass. Just a trick of headlights, he told himself. But his hand trembled. It wasn't until he reached the stop sign at Hemlock Bridge, a full 6 miles on, that he saw the muddy handprint on his door. It was unmistakable. 5 perfect splayed fingers, the palms streaked with grit and river sand pressed over the chrome handle, shivering with something far colder than January air. Grant wiped it away, making a mental note to wash the cab in the morning. He pushed the memory down. But mile 43 would not let him go. Back in town, he mentioned it in passing at the counter. Where other haulers nursed their coffee, eyes darted. One man squeezed his mug till the knuckles faded white. You saw her too? Someone whispered, as if confessing a blasphemy. Stories rushed in, eager, low-voiced. She's been there every winter since they found that red jacket by the river. If you run her down, she disappears. No body, no dent, no damage. But your lights flicker, and the cab stinks like cold water and earth. Pull over to help, and she'll ask if you can take her just past the old mill, but she never steps. Inside, she just stands there, shivering, waiting for you to make the choice. Grant tried to laugh it off. Just a prank. someone with a mean sense of humor. But part of him never stopped checking the side mirror, long after the handprint was gone. 1 week later, almost to the night, a fresh snow fell. Grant hit the same curve, headlights blazing white in the storm. This time, the red jacket stood. Directly on the yellow line, one arm raised, hood half off. Her hair stringy and slicked to her cheeks, framed eyes that didn't blink. Grant slammed the brakes, skidding on ice, heart hammering like a runaway. This time, he stopped. She didn't run. She didn't move. She stared him down, a sadness old as the hills in her gaze. He cracked the window. "You all right?" he called, his voice drowned by the wind. The woman didn't speak. Instead, she lifted the plastic bag and held it out, as if waiting for him to take it. He reached, hand-shaking, but as he brushed the opening, everything shifted. The world. Muted. The snow ceased, mid-flake. The radio fuzzed with a woman's voice, desperate, pleading. "I just want to go home." Grant's vision warped, the dashboard melting. For a disorienting moment, he thought he could taste cold creek water in his mouth. Suddenly, the woman was going off footsteps, no tracks. It's only a pool of melted slush, and the bag which had burst open to reveal nothing inside but wildflowers. And a single, cracked photograph of a smiling girl. Her jacket was red. Shaken to his core, Grant drove back to Black Ridge and reported the encounter to the sheriff. With tired resignation, the deputy added his story to a growing stack. Police records showed complaints and accident calls almost annually at mile 43, car doors left open with muddy prints. Found bouquets and witnesses with identical descriptions. Girl in the red jacket. Old Town records told the rest. Decades ago, a hitchhiker, Millie Hudson, was struck and killed by a distracted driver late one January night. They found her body a week later in the thaw, plastic grocery bags still looped around her frozen wrist. Face turned toward where the road vanished in the trees. Every winter since, she waits there, reliving the last ride never taken, asking strangers for a lift home that never comes. Grant never drove the pass after dark again. But he keeps her photograph clipped above his dash, in memory, in warning. Drive past mile 43 on a cold night, and you might see her too silent, expectant, in that forever red jacket, waiting for someone with a little kindness, for someone desperate enough to believe. If her story made you double-check your mirrors, don't drive alone tonight. Subscribe to Something Scray for more chilling tales that might just be real. And tell us, if a stranger in red asked for a ride, what would you do? The next story could be yours. Story 4. The tunnel with no exit. Ellie Griffin was never one to back down from a challenge. College sophomore studying environmental science. Was known among her friends for her curious spirit and an unshakable love for the Appalachian wilderness. So when a shorter route home from her university sent her toward an abandoned railroad tunnel deep in the mountains, she saw only an opportunity, a shortcut she could take once to save time before the holidays. The tunnel was a local legend itself. No maps marked its path, and the story spoke of its eerie fog and strange lingering voices in the dark. But Ellie, ever the skeptic, dismissed it all as mountain superstition, perfect fodder for late-night campfire tales. She fueled up, packed her flashlight, and convinced herself the old tunnel wouldn't be anything more than a damp, dusty passage through rock that chilly November evening. The forest around her car was thick as velvet, leafless branches scratching the sky like outstretched fingers. Ellie parked near the mouth of the tunnel, the rusted tracks choked with weeds, and the entrance gaping like a huge hollow mouth. Crackling with a mixture of anticipation and nerves, she switched on the headlights, grabbed her gear, and stepped. Inside, the air changed instantly cooler, damp, saturated with the scent of damp stone and decades of forgotten passage. Her footsteps echoed on gravel, each step swallowed by shadows. The tunnel swallowed light, but Ellie's flashlight pierced only so far ahead, revealing graffiti peeling from the walls and broken wooden ties scattered on the ground. The idea of a shortcut embedded itself deeper in her mind as she pressed on, trusting the soft crunch beneath her boots would lead her to the other side. But as she advanced, a creeping sense of wrongness began to coil around her spine. The further she went, the longer the tunnel seemed to stretch, till it felt as though she was walking inside a living, breathing shadow. After 20 minutes of steady pace, she stopped to check her phone. No signal. The screen blinked. No service. Then static hissed from the built-in radio app she'd recently discovered Dodd. Background noise she hadn't expected underground. She shook her head and turned back to moving. Flashlight beam fixed forward, trying to ignore the eerie feeling tightening her throat. Occasionally, faint scratching noises bounced off the walls, too soft to identify but persistent enough to unsettle. Ellie picked up her pace, eager to reach daylight before the battery in her headlamp flickered out. But no matter how far she moved, the tunnel's mouth never appeared, and every crack or groove in the concrete wall seemed to repeat itself as if she were trapped inside a loop. Then, the radio app burst to life, crackling with fragments of voices she didn't recognize. Static twisted into warped echoes of whispered words. "Help me. Please." Then a chilling whisper so soft it almost slipped past hearing Ellie. ... She froze in place. Her heart drummed wildly when a soft voice said her name again, closer this time. She swung the flashlight beam in every direction. Nothing. But the air thickened, pressing in on her. A flash of movement caught her eye deep. Ahead, a glimpse of a figure standing just beyond the reach of light. The silhouette was vague, tall, indistinct, almost ethereal but motionless. Ellie's breath hitched. Instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet felt rooted. She called out, voice shaking. "Hello? Who's there?" Only silence answered. But the radio crackled anew, her own voice, fractured and distorted, bleeding out in eerie, disjointed loops. "Hello? ... Help. ... Panic swept over her. Ellie turned around to leave, but the tunnel looked unfamiliar. The walls that had seemed straight now curved inward, twisting the space unnaturally. Every direction ahead shimmered with the same graffiti symbols she didn't recognize, painted in red and black. The same tags appeared again and again, a hypnotic pattern trapping her gaze. She ran, shifting between hope and dread, trying every turn, desperate to find a way out. The tunnel seemed endless. Her flashlight flickered. She'd started hearing soft footsteps behind her, to light for her own heels, but always keeping pace with hers. She dared not look back. Her breathing became ragged, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. Then a sudden blast of cold air rushed past her neck sharp, like icy fingers brushing skin. The whispered voice came again behind her. "Stay. Don't leave." Ellie sprinted forward in terror, breath freezing as the tunnel twisted further. Her headlamp died in a flicker, plunging her into darkness so complete it pressed on her eyes and ears. Frantically, she fumbled for her phone's flashlight app, but the screen went black. She pounded the walls, desperate for anything to hold onto or climb, but the surfaces seemed to close in, unyielding and smooth, after what felt like hours. The tunnel began to brighten, sunlight seeping through cracks that weren't there before. Ellie stumbled forward and emerged blinking onto a dusty roadside. But the world outside looked wrong. The familiar trees were twisted, their branches knotted unnaturally like gnarled fingers. The sky had turned an impossible shade of gray overhead, humming with a distant muffled roar she couldn't place. Ellie's phone, dead only moments ago, now blinked on with static-filled emergency alerts warnings of a missing college student, lost near the railroad tunnel, realizing the app on her radio recorded everything. She played back the audio. Her own voice repeated the fearful cries, but underneath, a strange undercurrent flowed thousands of whispered names. Voices layered and alive beneath the static. Returning to the safety of town was bittersweet. Ellie's disappearance had already been reported. Her worried parents and university officials flooded her phone with texts and calls once she arrived. She tried to explain, but words fell flat. Maps she checked and police records revealed no current or historic record of the tunnel, or at least none that matched the one she had just crossed. No trail led from the side she exited on, and her GPS tracked her for hours, disappearing under the same mountain before appearing abruptly near the highway outpost. Since that night, Ellie has never driven that way again. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right against her window, she swears she hears the tunnel's whispers calling her back, warning her that some paths have no exits, and some voices won't let you leave. If this story made you hesitate before taking a shortcut, remember Appalachian night roads are full of secrets. And sometimes the shortest route is trapped inside time itself. You ever got lost in a place that seemed to shift beneath your feet? Share your experience in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to Something Scray for more true horror tales that haunt even the brightest days. Story 5. The Woman by the Milepost. The two-lane road between Copper Ridge and Sulphur Gap was famous for its twists, rumored for its wrecks, and whispered about 4 things that slip through reality at night: truckers, local teens, and traveling. Strangers all shared one piece of advice when driving it after midnight: keep your eyes on the center line and don't ever stop, no matter what you see. Jolene Reeve didn't plan on believing any of the stories. She was practical 27, a substitute teacher and caretaker for her little brother, just taking the long way home from a late shift. But one night in April, as rain turned the blacktop glossy and wind gnawed the trees, that changed forever. She'd seen the others before: a pair of red brake lights far up ahead, a sudden swerve into fog. But that night, there was only the wail of wind, the rhythmic slap of her windshield blades, and the milepost. The legendary mile 112. A battered white marker angled beside. A lonely curve known for more crosses than road signs. Jolene's attention snapped to the shoulder. There, by the sign, stood a woman. Her dress, once white, now hung gray and in tatters, twisting in the storm. Bare feet on gravel, long hair swept wild by the wind, her thin arms hugged close to her chest. The woman made no motion, but Jolene felt her eyes deep, dark, and knowing lock with hers as she drew closer. Jolene's heart battered her ribs. She shook off a shiver and forced herself to remember local warnings. Always keep moving, always. But the rain burst against the windshield, blurring road and reason alike, and something deeper pity perhaps made Jolene hesitate. She eased the car to a crawl, her headlights painting the woman in pale gold, illuminating the mud streaked on her legs, as the bouquet of wilted flowers clutched in one trembling hand. She never raised her thumb. She just stood and stared, lips parted as if she might speak Jolene's name. "Are you all right?" Jolene called, rolling down the window an inch, letting cold air and unease rush in. The woman said nothing. Instead, she lifted her bouquet, almost pleading, and took a faltering step forward. Instinct screamed, "Go! Drive!" Jolene's hand quivered over the lock, but compassion rooted her in place. It was only when the woman's eyes caught the beams of the car shining with unnatural, mirrored wetness that Jolene's nerve finally snapped. She pressed the gas, peeling away with a panicked cry, never daring to look in the rear view for more than a second. It took nearly 10 minutes for her heartbeat to settle. The wipers drummed. She risked a glance beside her and nearly swerved. The passenger seat was empty, but water pooled on the old upholstery, as if someone had just been there dripping. Jolene tried to convince herself it was rain, nerves, or memory playing tricks. She made it home shaken, ready to brush it off until the next morning when she opened her car and found a single wilted wildflower on the dashboard. Muddy water pooled on the floor mat below. Beneath the flower was an old photograph, a blurred figure in a wedding dress, bouquet raised, face hidden by a veil. News soon reached her that she wasn't alone. Truckers passing the milepost in the blue hours swore they'd seen the same woman, always silent, always with the bouquet. Others confessed to pulling over only for the woman to vanish in the blink of an eye, leaving the smell of wet earth and a lingering chill in their bones. Some found bouquets in their cabs. Few, on rare occasions, claimed to wake in the morning with muddy footprints on the hood of their vehicle. Jolene couldn't let go, with help from the local librarian and a few old-timers at Pete's Diner. She unraveled the legend. Nearly 40 years before, a wedding party had crashed on that very bend, their headlights lost to a sudden downpour and hairpin turn. The young bride's body was the last found, bouquet clutched to her chest, eyes open and staring at the trees just yards from milepost 112. Some said she had been running for help, desperate to flag someone down, when fate or the river caught her. Now, every spring storm mess, especially on the accident's anniversary, a woman in tatters, bouquet in hand, appears by the marker. She never asks for a ride, she only waits, as if hoping someone will remember her heartbreak, acknowledge her loss, or maybe, just maybe, take her home at last. Jolene returned weeks later, parking by the milepost at sunrise with a fresh bouquet in hand. She knelt by the battered sign and whispered a message of peace first for the lost bride. And then for herself, hoping to mend the cold space the encounter left inside her. That day, her car remained dry. No flowers, no footprints, just the subdued stillness of the mountain as the storm clouds cleared. But she never forgot the feeling of that gaze, or the way pity and terror could intertwine like vines in the night. Now, when Jolene hears of other drivers catching a glimpse of a woman in rags, each with their own tale of unease, she tells them to honor her, not fear her. Some souls only need to be seen, she says, and some wounds, no matter how old, need one tape, one wildflower to finally let go. If you ever see someone standing by a lonely milepost in a storm, maybe it's better to keep driving, ... Or maybe, just for a moment, you could let them know they're not alone. Let us know if you've met a ghostly stranger. And don't forget to subscribe to Something Scray. The next tale might be waiting. Story 6. The pursuer Moloch Trent was no stranger to the winding Appalachian roads, or the uneasy feeling they could instill after dark. As a rideshare driver based in a small mountain town, he often ferried late-night patrons through empty stretches of tree-lined highways and narrow hollers. Most nights were uneventful, filled with tired conversations or quiet drives beneath a sky thick with stars. But one October night, his routine ride turned into a relentless nightmare that would haunt him long after the first light of dawn. He had just finished a drop-off near a sleepy town called Pine Hollow and was heading back toward the interstate, a familiar route through mist-shrouded ridges and quiet valleys. His dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m., and the moon hung low, a thin silver crescent barely lighting the road ahead. The air was brisk, laced with a faint scent of wood smoke from distant homes. Moloch's thoughts drifted to weekend plans, friends, a warm fire, sleep. Then, a sudden flash of bright headlights appeared behind him, glaring high beams that barely flickered despite the dense forest darkness. At first, he didn't pay much mind. Passing vehicles came and went along this road any time of night, but the headlights didn't pass. They stayed right on his tail, too close for comfort, burning through his rear view like twin suns. Malik adjusted his speed cautiously, trying to lose the tail without drawing attention. He flipped headlights between high and low beams, hoping the driver behind would move on. Instead, the vehicle kept pace, sometimes closing to the very edge. Of Malik's rear bumper, his heartbeat quickened. Up ahead, the ribbon of blacktop narrowed sharply. Malik's fingers curled tighter on the steering wheel, knuckles whitening. He thought of safe spots, turnout areas, gas stations, but all he could see were miles of forest hugging the curving road. No cell phone reception, no radio signal, just the oppressive quiet of night and the ghostly glow of the pursuing headlights. Time folded strangely on those roads. Every twist seemed sharper, every incline steeper. Malik's GPS faltered, the blue dot jittering with static, as if the mountain itself was folding the landscape beneath him. The road markers became sparse somagological markers, faded mileposts, but mostly just endless trees reaching like claws into the sky. Behind him, the lights pulsed, impatient. Malik tried signaling, tapping the brakes lightly to flash his taillights. Nothing changed. The vehicle matching each flicker, relentless and uncaring. His mind raced. Was this just reckless road rage, some drunk driver playing cat and mouse? Or something else? Something that didn't belong to the daylight world. He forced himself to breathe, eyes darting between the road and the mirror as he searched for answers in the darkness. At one perilous curve, Malik's car slipped slightly, tires scraping the gravel shoulder. His pursuer followed, hugging the curves. No attempt to pass or give way. A shadow appeared briefly beyond the trees, a flash of movement that didn't align with the car's progress. Malik's breath caught, yet the forest seemed as still, yet too alive, as if unseen eyes tracked him from the depths. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the chase tightened. Malik's relief came when he spotted a faint glow ahead, the dim lights of a roadside diner, its neon sign flickering weakly. He made a sharp right turn onto the approach road, slamming on brakes and pulling into a gravel lot. The pursuing headlights slowed, but stayed just beyond the entrance. Reluctant to come closer, Malik killed his engine and sat for a moment, heart pounding in his chest like a drumbeat of war. The passenger door clicked locked. His car frame seemed small and vulnerable in the towering quiet. He mustered the courage to step outside, eyes scanning the parking lot and the road behind. The headlights were gone. Only an unfinished silence filled the night. Grateful but unnerved, Malik keyed his phone. Still no signal. As he walked toward the diner's entrance, a flicker at the edge of his vision pulled him back. In the gravel near his car, tire tracks marred the dust, too distinct. Patterns side by side, one his own, the other. Deeper, wider, coming to a sudden stop, just short of the lot. No vehicle visible, no tire marks leading away. Malik's skin prickled. He looked up toward the dark tree line, but the night held only shadows and silence. Inside the diner, warm light and faint music contrasted sharply with the cold dread still clinging to him. The elderly waitress listened patiently to Malik's rambling story, nodding knowingly. She shared hushed tales of others in the mountains who'd felt the shadow driver, a presence that stalked roads when no one else was out, following those who traveled too late, too fast, or too tired. Some said it was a lost soul, condemned to drive forever in pursuit of a destination that didn't exist. Others whispered it was something darker, an ancient mountain spirit, manifestation of the forest's wrath for those who dared disturb its solitude. Malik left the diner well before sunrise, still shaken but determined to put distance between himself and that stretch of road. He reported the strange experience to local authorities, but the evidence was slim. No other eyewitnesses, no toll booth cameras, no nearby traffic. Weeks later, Malik retrieved security footage from a highway. Camera just passed the Pine Hollow turnoff. The tape showed his white sedan cruising along, but no second vehicle followed. Only his car appeared. Yet tire tracks near the old gravel lot suggested otherwise. It was as if the pursuer had never been corporeal, yet left behind marks where the lights could be seen. Malik never drove those back roads again at night. The tale left him questioning what lurks in the mountain shadows, and what it means to be truly alone on a road where your lights are followed, but by no one you can see. If you ever feel the burning gaze of headlights in your mirror long after an empty stretch of highway, remember, sometimes it's not a car you should fear, but what's behind it. Think you could face down the midnight pursuer? Subscribe to Something Scray for more true tales that blur the line between the natural and the supernatural in the heart of Appalachia. Share your own late-night road stories in the comments, because on these mountain roads, you're never. Every mile of Appalachian blacktop hides a secret. Every turn a shadow you'll never understand until you're the one alone behind the wheel. These stories are more than urban legends or old superstitions. They're warnings carved into the fog, echoed through generations. The drivers who shared their tales aren't thrill seekers or storytellers. They're people who glanced up at just the wrong moment or answered a knock they should have ignored. Some made it through with shivers and scars, while others left behind only tire tracks and memories their families are still trying to explain. As the dawn creeps over twisted trees and empty roads, you might think fear fades with the sunrise. But in Appalachia, the night never truly ends. The echoes of these encounters stay with you every time you see headlights appear in your rear view, every hitchhiker's silhouette on a lonely mile, every unexplained static on your radio. Mountains, after all, keep their own counsel. And if you're not careful, you might find yourself becoming someone else's midnight story. If these tales chilled you, subscribe to Something Scary. When brakes squeal and darkness closes in, remember, out here, fear doesn't just linger, it follows.